The night was heavy and silent, the air filled with dust and cold wind. The alien colony stood in ruins. Broken walls, burnt houses, and empty streets. Nothing moved except the shadows of collapsed towers. It looked like a dead place. A place no one should walk through. Yet footsteps echoed there. A human traveler moved slowly through the darkness, his boots crushing bits of glass and stone. His name was Daniel. He had no reason to be there except that his path had gone wrong. The stars had guided him off course, and now he was walking through this forgotten world. He thought he was alone, but then it happened. A sound broke the silence, soft, trembling, like a whisper carried by the wind. It was a cry, small, weak, not of an adult but of a child. Daniel froze, his heart beating faster. In a place like this there should be no one alive. He listened again. The cry came once more, this time joined by another. Two voices, faint but real. His hands tightened around the old flashlight he carried. He pointed it ahead. The beam cut through the smoke and showed broken walls and a half-collapsed shelter. Something moved inside. He stepped closer, careful, his breath steady. He was ready for danger. But what he saw stopped him in his tracks. Two small figures huddled together, thin, covered in dirt and ash, their big eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Alien children. They looked at him with fear and hope mixed together, their voices shaky. One whispered words he did not understand. The other simply cried. Their bodies were trembling, their clothes torn. Daniel crouched slowly so he did not scare them. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his voice calm. "I won't hurt you." The children pressed closer to each other. They were frightened, but they did not run. Daniel could see they were too weak to run. He pulled a small pack from his side, took out water, and placed it on the ground between them. At first they stared, not moving, but then one of them crawled forward and grabbed the bottle with shaking hands. They drank like they had not tasted water in days. Daniel's chest tightened. Something inside him told him this was not just chance. These children had been left behind, abandoned or worse, and now they had found him. He looked around. The colony was too quiet, too empty, the kind of quiet that hides danger. "Where are your people?" he asked, knowing they might not understand. The older child pointed with a trembling finger toward the far side of the ruins, then quickly hid his hand as if afraid something might see. Daniel understood enough. Danger was close. Maybe hunters, maybe soldiers. He had heard stories in space taverns of alien forces that cleared out colonies and left only ashes. Maybe this was one of those places. The younger child suddenly grabbed Daniel's arm, whispering something desperate, the voice high and urgent. Daniel could not understand the words, but he understood the fear. They were pleading with him, begging him not to leave them. His heart wrestled with reason. He was only one man, a traveler, no soldier, no hero, and yet how could he walk away? How could he leave them to the darkness? He looked into their eyes and saw not just fear but hope. Hope that he was different. Hope that he would choose to stay. Daniel stood and lifted the flashlight higher. Scanning the ruins, shadows stretched long. The wind howled, and far in the distance a metallic sound echoed. Like armor brushing against stone, his blood ran cold. Someone or something was searching. The children pressed against his legs, hiding behind him. He knew then his choice was already made. He could not leave. He could not pretend he never heard their cries. He whispered, "Stay close." He guided them into a broken alley, moving quickly but silently. Each step felt heavier, each sound behind them sharper. The night seemed alive with eyes watching. Daniel felt the tension grip his chest. Then the cry came again. Not from the children, but from far behind. A call, deep and harsh. Alien voices carried through the ruins. The hunters had returned. Daniel tightened his grip on the children's hands. His jaw set. The cries in the dark had found him, and now his path was no longer his own. He was bound to them, and whatever hunted them would have to face him first. The night grew colder, the ruins darker. But within that darkness, three figures moved together, a human and two fragile alien children, walking into danger they could not yet see. And the story was only beginning. The ruins were not silent anymore. Distant echoes of armored footsteps moved through the broken streets, every sound carried like thunder in the empty colony. Daniel kept low, guiding the two alien children through cracked alleys, his flashlight off now. He relied on the faint light of broken moons above. The older child, a girl with wide, glowing eyes, tugged on his sleeve and whispered, her voice weak but sharp. The words were alien, but her tone was clear. Please, she was pleading, begging him not to leave them behind. Daniel crouched beside them. He tried to read their faces. Fear had carved deep lines into their young eyes. They were not just lost, they were hunted. "I'll help you," he whispered, though he knew they might not understand his language. Still, the children's shoulders eased. Just a little, they moved deeper into the ruins, broken walls rising around them like giant teeth. The ground was covered with ash. Daniel's boots left marks, and he cursed under his breath. Hunters could follow those tracks easily. He wiped the path with his coat as they moved, trying to erase their trail. The younger child, a boy no older than 6 in human years, stumbled and fell. His knees scraped. A soft cry escaped his lips. Daniel quickly scooped him up, holding a finger to his own lips. "Shh," he whispered. The boy clung to his neck, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Suddenly, a harsh sound cut through the night, a metallic roar followed by strange clicking noises. Daniel froze. The girl grabbed his arm tight. She whispered a single word again and again, her alien tongue sharp but desperate. Daniel could not understand, but he felt it. "They are coming." He pulled them into a half-broken storage building. The roof half gone, the walls cracked, but it gave them shadows to hide in. He crouched low with the children pressed against him, his eyes scanning the dark. Then he saw them. Shapes moved in the distance, tall, armored figures with glowing eyes, hunters. They walked in lines, their weapons humming, searching every ruin. They were not looking for treasure. They were looking for survivors. And Daniel realized the truth. The children were not abandoned by accident. They were targets. The girl clutched his coat. Her lips trembling, she raised her small hand to her chest and then pointed at him, her eyes filled with tears. Daniel's breath caught. She was pleading, not just for safety, but for him to be their protector. For a moment he wanted to deny it. He wanted to tell himself this was not his fight, but the way the boy's small fingers dug into his shoulder, the way the girl's eyes refused to look anywhere but at him, it broke through his hesitation. They believed in him already, even without words. Daniel placed his hand on the ground, pressing it flat to calm himself. Then he looked at them and nodded. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered. He motioned for them to stay silent, then carefully peeked through the crack in the wall. The hunters were closer now, their footsteps heavy, their voices low and cruel. He could not understand their alien words, but the tone was enough. They spoke with amusement, like predators confident their prey had nowhere to run. The boy buried his face into Daniel's chest. The girl bit her lip so hard it bled. Daniel felt anger rise inside him. He had seen cruelty before across worlds, but this, hunting children as if they were nothing, it turned his stomach. He searched the floor of the broken room, his eyes sharp. Then he found it. A rusted metal bar. Not much, but better than nothing. He gripped it tight, his knuckles white. He was no soldier, but he would fight if he had to. A shadow moved across the wall. One of the hunters walked past, the glow of its armor lighting the cracks. The children held their breath. Daniel stayed still. His heart beat so loud he thought it might give them away. The hunter stopped, sniffing the air. Then, after a long pause, it walked on. The children exhaled shakily. Daniel pulled them closer, whispering, "Not yet. We move when they turn away." Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the hunters shifted direction, their voices fading. Daniel knew it was their only chance. He lifted the boy in his arms, motioned for the girl to hold on to his side, and they slipped out of the ruin, moving fast but low. They crept through alleys, over broken stairs, through cracks in fallen walls. Every step was filled with tension. One mistake and the hunters would find them. Daniel's muscles burned, but he kept going. The children's lives pressed into his heart heavier than any weight. At last they reached a wider street. Broken lamps hung over it. The path led toward the edge of the colony. Maybe safety lay beyond, but the girl suddenly pulled at him again, shaking her head, her voice a whisper. She pointed not toward the edge, but deeper into the ruins. Daniel frowned. "No, we need to leave," he whispered. But her eyes widened with terror. She pressed her hands together as if praying, her voice urgent, the word clear even through the alien tongue. "Please," he hesitated, torn between escape and her plea. What was she trying to tell him? What waited deeper inside? Daniel looked into her eyes, glowing with tears and desperation, and he knew he could not refuse. He nodded once, and her relief was instant. She took his hand, guiding him toward the deeper ruins, the boy still in his arms, the hunters still behind them, danger thick in the air. And as they moved into the shadows, Daniel realized something. This was not just about survival. The children were leading him to something important, something that could change everything. The night was not done. The plea of the children had only just begun, and whatever waited ahead might reveal why they were hunted, and why fate had brought him here. The ruins grew darker as Daniel followed the children deeper inside. The girl's small hand clutched his sleeve, guiding him through narrow passages while the boy rested weakly in his arms. The human's mind was sharp with questions. Why had they begged him to go this way? Why not escape the colony's edge? Every step echoed softly on the broken stone, but behind them, faint sounds followed. Hunters, their heavy armor clicking, their strange voices carrying through the empty streets. Daniel felt his chest tighten. They were being tracked. The girl suddenly stopped and touched her neck with trembling fingers, then pointed at the boy. Daniel looked closer. Under the child's collar, glowing faint lines were burned into the skin, strange patterns like symbols. They pulsed faintly in the dark. Daniel's breath caught. It was a mark. He had heard rumors before in space taverns of alien regimes branding survivors, not with metal but with energy, marks that let hunters trace their prey, and now he was seeing it. The children were not just unlucky stragglers. They were marked to be hunted forever. The girl lifted her own sleeve, showing a faint scar on her arm. Smaller, weaker, but still glowing, she whispered in her broken tongue, tears running down her cheeks. Daniel could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. We cannot escape them. They will always find us. Daniel's jaw tightened. He set the boy down gently and touched the glowing lines. The skin was hot, the mark alive like fire beneath. The boy whimpered. Daniel pulled his hand back, rage rising inside him. This was not just cruelty, it was sport. The children were being used like prey in a game. The hunters' voices grew louder, closer now. Daniel's mind raced. If the marks worked like trackers, then no matter how far they ran, the children would never be free, he whispered to himself. Then we cut the signal. He searched the broken room they had entered. Rubble and dust everywhere. His flashlight beam flickered over metal shards, old wires, broken tools. Then he spotted something. A half-burnt control panel. Still humming faintly, its circuits alive though weak. Daniel's mind sparked with an idea. He turned to the children. Hold on. This will hurt, he said, though they could not understand. He grabbed one of the old wires, stripped it with his knife. Sparks flew. He pressed it against the edge of the mark on the boy's neck. The child screamed. The girl gasped and tried to pull his arm away, but Daniel held firm, whispering, "Just a little longer." The mark sizzled, glowing brighter, then it cracked. A sharp burning smell filled the air. Finally it dimmed, flickering until it went dark. The boy collapsed into Daniel's arms, unconscious but breathing. Daniel's heart pounded, sweat rolling down his forehead. It had worked, at least for one. But the sound of the scream had carried. Outside, the hunters stopped, their armor clanging as they turned, their voices sharper now. The girl pulled at Daniel's coat, desperate, pointing at her own scar, begging him to do the same, but there was no time. The hunters were coming fast. Daniel grabbed the boy, motioned the girl to follow, and they rushed into another alley. The night exploded with light. Beams cut through the ruins as the hunters spread, searching, their weapons glowing. Daniel pressed the children behind a broken wall. He peeked out, counting 3 hunters in sight, maybe more in the shadows. He had only a rusted bar and his wits no real weapon, but his anger burned hotter than his fear. He thought of the boy's scream, of the mark sizzling away, of the cruelty that left scars on children, and something inside him hardened. He waited until one hunter came close, its glowing eyes sweeping the alley. Daniel gripped the bar tight, his body tense. When the alien turned slightly, Daniel lunged. The bar slammed against the back of its helmet. Sparks burst. The hunter staggered but did not fall. It spun with a roar, claws raised. Daniel shouted. Swinging again, the children screamed. The fight was loud, too loud. The other hunters turned, their eyes fixing on the sound. Daniel pushed the bar forward, driving it against a weak spot in the alien's armor. The creature howled and fell, sparks spilling from its body. The human grabbed the fallen weapon, a strange alien blade that hummed with energy. He held it awkwardly but tight, his chest heaving. "Come on then," he whispered through clenched teeth. The other hunters charged. The girl screamed, pulling the boy closer. Daniel stood in front of them, weapon glowing in his hand. But before the clash came, a horn sounded in the distance, sharp and long. The hunters froze, their glowing eyes flickered. Then they pulled back, retreating quickly, their footsteps vanishing into the ruins. Daniel stood frozen, blade shaking in his hands. Sweat dripping, he did not understand. Why had they stopped? Why leave when they had him cornered? The girl whispered something again, her voice shaking. She pointed at the dead hunter's body, at the broken mark glowing faintly in the boy's neck. Then at the horn echoing in the distance, Daniel's breath slowed. Realization hit him. This was not just a hunt, it was a game. The horn meant the first round was over. The hunters would return again. Until every marked child was gone, he looked down at the boy, then at the girl's desperate face. He tightened his grip on the alien blade, his voice low but certain. Not this time. The hunters had marked the children, but now Daniel carried a mark of his own, one in his heart. A vow to fight back, and in the ruins of the dark colony, the game had just changed. The horn's echo still rolled across the ruins, a cruel sound that made the children shiver. Daniel tightened his grip on the alien blade, his chest rising and falling heavy. The hunters had pulled back, but he knew it was not mercy. It was part of their twisted game. The boy lay weak but breathing. The girl knelt beside him, whispering in her alien tongue, her voice full of comfort though her own eyes held fear. Daniel crouched close. "We can't stay here," he whispered. The hunters would return stronger, faster, and now they knew exactly where to look. The girl nodded quickly as if she understood. She tugged at his sleeve and pointed toward the broken towers in the distance. Beyond them lay the wild outskirts of the colony. Daniel glanced that way. The road was wide and open, too easy to be seen, but they had no choice. He lifted the boy into his arms again, the child's small frame light as a feather but heavy with responsibility. The girl walked at his side, holding onto his coat. Together they stepped into the ruins once more, the moonlight spilling across shattered streets. The silence did not last. Within minutes the hunters' voices rose again, their armor clanging, their guttural laughter bouncing from wall to wall. They were spreading out faster than before. Daniel's heart raced. He moved quickly but careful, turning corners, slipping through cracks, each step feeling like a race against time. A sudden flash of light cut across the street. A hunter's scanning beam swept near them. Daniel pressed the children flat against the wall. Holding his breath, the beam passed just inches away. The girl buried her face against his arm. The boy whimpered softly. Daniel tightened his hold, praying the sound would not betray them. When the beam moved on, he exhaled slowly, guiding them forward, but the streets were no longer empty. Shadows moved above, hunters climbing the broken towers, their glowing eyes scanning from high ground. Daniel realized they were being herded, pushed toward the open road, toward the trap. "Think," he muttered under his breath, scanning quickly. Then he spotted it. A narrow sewer grate half open under a collapsed wall. Not safe, not clean, but hidden. He set the boy down gently, pried the grate open with his blade, and motioned the children inside. The girl hesitated, fear in her eyes, but Daniel gave her a firm nod. "Trust me," he whispered. She helped the boy crawl in first, then slid after him. Daniel followed last, pulling the grate back into place, just as heavy footsteps thundered past above them. The sewer was damp, foul, the stench thick, but it was dark. And darkness was their friend. Water dripped, rats scurried, but Daniel felt relief. At least for a moment they were unseen. They crawled forward, the tunnel stretching long, the sound of hunters muffled above. Daniel's shoulders ached from carrying the boy, but he did not stop. Not until they reached a cracked opening leading into a deeper chamber. Here he let them rest. The girl sat close to her brother, stroking his hair, whispering softly. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing hard. He stared at the alien blade in his hand, its faint glow casting light on the wet stone. He whispered to himself, "How long can we keep running?" The answer came too soon. A sharp hiss echoed through the sewer, followed by metallic clanging. Daniel's head snapped up, the girl gasped. Glowing red eyes lit up in the dark. A hunter had followed them inside. Daniel stood quickly, blade ready. The hunter crouched low in the tunnel, its massive frame scraping the stone. It hissed, raising its weapon. Daniel lunged first, the blade clashing against alien steel. Sparks filled the dark, the children screamed. The fight was brutal in the narrow space. Every strike echoing, Daniel ducked, swung, his arms trembling from the weight. The hunter slashed, cutting stone. Missing him by inches, Daniel gritted his teeth, his rage burning hotter than fear. He drove the blade upward, stabbing into the creature's chest. It roared, shaking the tunnel, then collapsed with a thud that shook the ground. Daniel panted, sweat dripping down, the blade buzzing in his hand. He turned to the children. "We can't stay. They'll know," he said, pulling them forward again. The sewer finally opened into a crack that led back to the surface. Daniel pushed them out first, then climbed after. They emerged into the outskirts of the colony, a wasteland of broken stone and wild weeds. The air colder here, the horizon vast, but before relief could set in, the horn sounded again, louder, closer, from behind them and ahead. Daniel froze. Hunters were not only chasing from the ruins. They had circled around, cutting off the road. The girl's eyes filled with tears. The boy weakly clung to Daniel's neck. Daniel clenched his jaw, scanning the land. Then he spotted it. A canyon ahead, narrow but deep. Jagged rocks forming paths that could hide them. Risky but better than the open road. Hold tight, he whispered. Breaking into a run, his boots pounding the dirt. The children clutching him behind them, the hunters roared, their footsteps shaking the ground. Beams of light shot past, searing the rocks. The chase had truly begun. Daniel leapt over stones, ducked under broken trees. The hunters closing fast, their voices rising with cruel delight. The girl cried out as a beam scorched the ground near her foot. Daniel pushed harder, his lungs burning. The canyon entrance drawing closer. The boy lifted his head weakly, his glowing eyes meeting Daniel's. Though the child could not speak his language, Daniel understood the silent plea. Don't stop. The canyon opened before them. Daniel dashed inside, the walls rising high, shadows deep. The hunters followed, their roars echoing like monsters in the dark. The chase was not over. It had only grown fiercer. The human and the children were running for more than their lives now. They were running against a game designed for their death. And somewhere in the shadows of the canyon, Daniel swore he would turn the game against its makers. The canyon walls rose high around them, sharp edges casting deep shadows. Daniel's breath came heavy as he carried the boy. The girl ran close to his side, clutching his coat. Behind them, the hunters' roars still echoed. Though fainter now, the chase had slowed. But it was not over. The path twisted deeper into the canyon, the air colder, the silence heavier. Daniel pushed on until his legs shook. Finally, he spotted a narrow crack in the wall. Almost hidden by jagged rocks, he stopped, crouched low, and studied it. The entrance was small, but just wide enough for them to slip inside. Come, he whispered. Motioning the girl first, she slid through. Pulling her brother's hand, Daniel followed last, the rock scraping his back as he squeezed through. Inside was darkness, cool and still. A cave stretching inward, he lit his flashlight. Its weak beam cutting through the black. The space widened into a hidden chamber. High ceiling, rough walls, and an old fire pit at the center. The smell of dust and age filled the air. It was a place forgotten, a shelter. The children sank to the ground, exhausted. The girl wrapped her arms around her brother, whispering softly in her alien tongue. Daniel crouched beside them. Pulling out a ration bar from his pack, he broke it in half, offering it to them. At first they stared, uncertain. Then the girl took it, breaking pieces for her brother. The boy chewed slowly, his weak frame shaking. But color returned to his face. Daniel watched in silence, a strange warmth filling his chest. In the middle of this cruel hunt, these small acts felt like defiance. Life where death was expected. For a moment the cave felt safe. The hunters' voices distant, the fire pit cold but welcoming. Daniel sat back, leaning against the wall, the alien blade across his lap. His eyes heavy but sharp, he whispered to himself. This will have to be enough for now. The girl crawled closer, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She touched her chest with one hand, then pointed at him, her voice trembling but clear. Man, she said, the first word he had understood from her lips. Daniel blinked, then nodded slowly. Yes, human, he whispered back, pointing to himself. Her face softened. She repeated the word again, stronger this time. Human. Then she pressed her hand over her brother's heart and whispered something else. Daniel could not understand, but he felt the meaning. Please save him. His throat tightened. He gave her a firm nod, no words needed. She smiled faintly for the first time. A fragile thing, but real. The silence stretched. Daniel let them rest, his ears alert for any sound outside. Time passed slowly. The moons shifted, shadows crawling along the cave walls. But for now they were hidden. Then faintly he heard it. Not the roar of hunters, but a different sound. Soft footsteps, light against the stone. Daniel's grip tightened on the blade. He crouched low. The children stiffened, their eyes wide from the shadows of the deeper cave. A figure appeared, thin and bent. An old alien wrapped in ragged cloth, its eyes glowing dim. It raised its hands slowly, showing they were empty. Its voice cracked as it spoke in a mix of alien tongue and broken trade language. You run from them, it rasped, pointing toward the canyon. Hunters. Daniel did not lower his blade, but his eyes narrowed. Who are you? He asked. Though he knew the alien might not understand, the figure coughed, then tapped its chest. Shelter, safe for little ones. Its eyes rested on the children, soft with pity. The girl whispered quickly in her own tongue. Recognition in her voice, Daniel watched carefully, then slowly lowered his blade, not fully, but enough. The old alien moved closer to the fire pit, kneeling, its hands shaking as it struck stone together. Sparks flew, faint light grew. The fire crackled weak but warm. Shadows danced across the chamber. For the first time, the cold lifted a little. The children leaned closer to the warmth, their faces glowing. Daniel studied the old alien, questions burning in his mind. Why was it here? Why had it helped? The figure finally spoke again, its broken words clear enough. Hunters. Mark children. Sport for lords. No mercy. Its voice dropped, heavy with sorrow. But you, human, you fight. They fear that. Daniel's eyes hardened. So the hunter's game was worse than he thought. Not just cruelty, but entertainment for higher powers. He clenched the blade tighter, his jaw set. The old alien coughed again, pointing toward the cave's deeper tunnel. Safe path. Out. When moons fall, it whispered. Then its voice dropped softer. But betrayal hides, even in shelter. Its eyes glimmered with warning. Daniel's chest tightened. He glanced at the children, then back at the old alien. Was this shelter truly safe, or another trap waiting to spring? He could not be sure. The fire burned quietly. The children huddled close, their breathing steady. Daniel sat awake, blade across his lap, eyes on the shadows. The old alien murmuring prayers in a tongue long forgotten. Outside, the horn of the hunter sounded once more. But this time it was fainter, farther away. For the first time since the chase began, there was space to breathe. Yet Daniel knew the old alien's words would haunt him. Betrayal hides even in shelter. The shelter of hope had given them a moment of peace. But peace never lasted long in a world built on cruelty. And deep inside, Daniel braced himself, knowing the next test was coming. The fire in the shelter burned low, its faint glow painting the cave walls in orange. Daniel sat awake with the alien blade across his lap. The children asleep beside him, their small faces calm for the first time. The old alien sat farther back, its dim eyes watching the flames, its breathing shallow. Daniel's mind was restless. The old alien's warning echoed in him. Betrayal hides even in shelter. He didn't know if he should trust the figure. But exhaustion weighed heavy. Still, he refused to close his eyes. Hours passed, the moons outside shifting, when suddenly the ground trembled. Dust fell from the cave ceiling. Daniel's grip tightened on the blade. The girl stirred awake, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Then it came, a sound like thunder rolling through stone. The hunters, their roar shaking the canyon. They had found the shelter. The old alien's face turned pale. It rose slowly, hands shaking. No safe, no safe, it whispered, backing into the shadows. Daniel's jaw clenched, so the warning was real. They had been tracked again, perhaps by the marks, perhaps by betrayal. It didn't matter anymore. The girl pulled her brother close, whispering frantically in her tongue. Daniel crouched before them, his voice steady, though his chest burned. "Stay behind me," he said. The cave entrance burst open. Rocks crashing down as armored figures forced their way inside. Their glowing eyes cut through the dark, weapons raised. Their guttural laughter filled the chamber. Daniel rose to his feet, blade humming in his grip. His eyes locked on them. He was just one man, but behind him were two lives that could not fight, could not run anymore. If he fell, they fell too. The hunters stepped closer, their leader tall, its armor blackened, strange symbols etched across its chest. It pointed its weapon at Daniel and hissed words in its alien tongue, the tone mocking as if daring him to try. Daniel lifted the blade, his voice low but hard. "You'll have to go through me." The hunters lunged. The cave erupted with light and sound. Daniel swung hard, his blade crashing against alien steel, sparks bursting. He ducked as a strike missed his head by inches. His body screamed with pain, but his will drove him forward. The girl cried out as one hunter charged toward her. Daniel roared, throwing himself across the room, his blade slicing through the attacker's side. The alien howled, collapsing in a spray of sparks. Daniel staggered but stood firm, his teeth clenched. The leader stepped forward. Raising a massive weapon, Daniel braced. But before the strike landed, the old alien shouted, its weak voice cutting through the chaos. It threw a burning log from the fire pit. The flames caught on the hunter's armor. Sparks hissing, the creature stumbled back. "Go, human!" the old alien rasped. "Save them!" But Daniel did not run, he planted his feet, his chest rising with every breath. "I don't run," he growled. The hunters charged again, two at once, their blades clashing with his. The cave shook with the force Daniel pushed, rage burning through his arms. He thought of the children's cries in the dark, the glowing marks on their skin, the cruelty of this hunt. It gave him strength. With a furious cry, he shoved one hunter back, then spun, driving the blade through the chest of the other. Its body sparked and collapsed. The leader roared in fury, swinging wide, the force knocking Daniel against the wall. Pain shot through his ribs, his vision blurred, but he forced himself up, spitting blood. The children screamed his name, though they barely knew it, their voices sharp, desperate. It pulled him back from the edge. Daniel lifted the blade again, his stance shaking but unbroken. The leader charged. Their weapons clashed in a storm of sparks, the cave walls glowing with each strike. Daniel's muscles burned, his breath ragged. But he refused to fall. Step by step, he forced the leader back toward the fire pit. The old alien coughed violently, collapsing near the flames. Its last words, weak but clear: "End the game." Daniel gritted his teeth, using every last ounce of strength. He feinted left, then drove the blade upward. Straight into the leader's chest, the alien roared, its armor cracking, sparks bursting like fire. With one final shove, Daniel sent it crashing into the fire pit. The flames swallowed it whole. The cave fell silent. The other hunters pulled back, their glowing eyes flickering. They hissed among themselves, then retreated into the canyon. Their leader gone, their laughter silenced. Daniel dropped to his knees, the blade clattering beside him, sweat and blood dripping, his body trembling. The children rushed to him, the girl grabbing his arm, the boy clinging to his neck, their voices crying softly. He wrapped his arms around them, his breath heavy, but his eyes hard. "It's over. For now," he whispered, though deep down he knew the hunters would return. The game was not finished. The fire burned high, the leader's armor melting into ash. Daniel looked into the flames, his chest filled with both fury and resolve. This was not just survival anymore. It was war. He glanced at the children, their faces shining with trust, and he made a silent vow. If the hunters wanted a game, he would end it no matter the cost. The last stand in the cave had given them hope, but it had also lit a fire that would burn across the stars. The cave was quiet after the battle. The fire burned low, and the hunters had vanished into the canyon. Daniel sat against the wall, his body aching, his clothes torn, but his arms wrapped tightly around the two alien children. They clung to him as if he were their last shield against the world. The old alien lay near the fire pit, its breathing shallow. Its eyes dim, Daniel crawled closer, still holding the boy with one arm, the girl following at his side. The old one whispered faintly, "You fought like no other. Human." Its lips curled into the faintest smile, then its eyes closed forever. Silence filled the chamber. The children lowered their heads, even if they had not known the old alien long. They understood loss. They had lived with it too many times. Daniel placed a hand over the old one's chest, whispering softly, "Rest now." But there was no time to grieve. Outside, faint horns sounded again, distant but clear. The hunters were regrouping. The game was not finished. It would never be finished until the children were gone. Daniel stood slowly, lifting the boy into his arms, the girl taking his hand. Together they stepped out of the shelter, into the canyon where the cold wind blew, the sky glowing with the pale light of moons. They walked toward the edge of the colony, Daniel's mind racing. He could not keep running forever. The hunters would always return unless something greater stopped them, unless he could turn the hunters' own cruelty against them. As they neared the canyon's end, lights suddenly flashed ahead. Not hunter lights, but brighter, steadier ships. Daniel froze, tightening his hold on the children. The girl gasped, whispering a word in her tongue, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. A massive ship descended into the canyon, its engines shaking the ground, its sleek surface shining like steel. Daniel's heart pounded. Was it another part of the game? Or something else entirely? The ship landed, a ramp lowering with a hiss of steam. Figures stepped out, not hunters, but soldiers in different armor, silver and white, their weapons sharp but carried with discipline. At their front was a tall alien woman, her robe marked with symbols of authority, her glowing eyes sharp as fire. She looked at Daniel, then at the children, and her face shifted from stern to shaken. She stepped forward quickly, kneeling before the girl, whispering in their shared tongue. Tears filling her eyes, the girl answered softly, Her small hands trembling, Daniel watched, confused but alert, until the woman finally turned to him, speaking in broken trade language. You saved them. Her voice was heavy with awe. Daniel frowned, holding the boy tighter. Who are you? The woman pressed her hand to her chest. Counsel, protector of lost ones. These children, not prey. They are heirs. Daniel's eyes widened. Heirs? The woman nodded, tears glistening. Blood of the royal line, hidden, hunted for sport. But alive because of you. The girl looked up at him, her eyes glowing brighter. She reached for his hand, whispering softly. Man, her voice steady now, full of trust. Daniel's chest tightened. The truth sank in. Their cries in the dark had not only been pleas for survival, they had been cries of an entire people's future. These children were more than orphans. They were the last hope of a fallen throne. Behind him, the horn sounded again, the hunters appearing at the far ridge, their glowing eyes blazing. But the council soldiers raised their weapons, ships powering up. The hunters roared, but for the first time they hesitated, their game broken. The woman raised her hand, her voice fierce. No more games, she shouted. The council soldiers unleashed a wave of fire. The hunters scattered, their cruel laughter silenced. Daniel stood still, the children clutching him, watching the hunters retreat into the night. The game ended not with his death, but with the truth revealed. The councilwoman stepped closer, bowing her head slightly. Human, your name will be remembered. You protected what even we thought lost. Daniel shook his head, his voice low. I didn't do it for names. I did it because they asked. He looked down at the children, their eyes shining with hope. They cried. And I couldn't walk away. The woman smiled faintly. That is why you succeeded, where so many failed. The children hugged him tighter, their small arms wrapped around his neck, their voices whispering his name, not in fear this time, but in love. The canyon wind blew cold, but Daniel felt warmth in his chest. He had been just a traveler, lost and wandering, yet fate had made him the protector of heirs, the breaker of a cruel hunt. The shocking ending was not his death or their capture. It was this: the human who had stumbled into ruins had changed the destiny of an entire people. As the council ship rose into the sky, carrying them away from the cursed colony, the girl pressed her hand against the window, her glowing eyes fixed on Daniel, her lips whispering one last word: hope. And Daniel knew then, the children's cries in the dark had not only saved themselves, they had saved him too.